Make Walters part of your game day routine. Located just across the street from the ballpark, Walters prides itself on having better than usual bar food and is loaded with TVs both inside and outside.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability. ASU isn't just ahead of the curve, it's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online, that's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Gore into the wide of the pitch. Swing and a miss. He struck him out. Back to the fastball at 96 miles an hour. So that's how this season starts for MacKenzie Gore. He strikes out Trey Turner. Harper's 7th year with the Phillies, matching his 7 years spent with the Nationals prior. Now the pitch. Swing and a miss. He struck him out with a slider. Is 1-1 on the way. Swung on, hit on the ground toward the right side. Second baseman Garcia to his left scoops it up, and the throw on to low, and plenty of time for the out. And it's a 1-2-3 inning to start the season for left-hander MacKenzie Gore. And the pitch is right in there, called strike 3. Looks at a fastball knee-high to the inside part of the plate at 96 miles an hour. And that is strikeout number 10 for MacKenzie Gore. Gore into the wide. Here it comes. Breaking ball. Swing and a miss. He struck him out. A new career high for MacKenzie Gore. He strikes out the side of the 5th inning. He has fanned 12 Philadelphia Phillies in the first 5 innings.
Now the windup, the 1-2 pitch. Swing and a miss. He struck him out with a breaking ball. That's 13 strikeouts. A new Nationals opening day record for MacKenzie Gore.
And welcome to Nats Chat, along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman, who is at Nationals Park. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. It is great to be with you for season number 5 of this podcast, which gives you an episode for the morning after every Nationals regular season, and if necessary, postseason game day. Happy 2025 season. We are coming to you off a Nationals loss on MLB's 2025 opening day, a 7-3 10-inning loss to the Philadelphia Phillies at Nationals Park on Thursday in Game 1 of a 3-game series. And in a game in which the Nats blew a 1-0 7th-inning lead, but overcame a 3-1 8th-inning deficit. Please subscribe to the podcast if you're not already doing that. Subscribing to the podcast costs you nothing. Make sure that you never miss an episode. This installment of Nats Chat is brought to us by Mason Kalfas, the top legal recruiter in Washington, D.C. Mason has been with us since our very first season. You can reach him at 202-486-3535. You can reach us on X at Nats_chat. You can find us on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. You can email the show, natschatpodcast@gmail.com, including if you would like to sponsor the podcast. We'd love to have you on board. Hit up the man who runs the podcast, Tim Shovers. Again, that email address, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. So you can frame what happened with the Nats on opening day in several ways. If you prefer to focus on the positive, you certainly can do that. You can rave about starting pitcher MacKenzie Gore, who was sensational. You can sing the praises of catcher Keibert Ruiz, who looked like the player who manager Davey Martinez has been telling us about, a player poised for a good season of back-to-back bad seasons. But there were negatives for the Nats in this game, including the Nats offense as a whole and a Nats bullpen that was quite bad. 5 Nats relievers combined to allow 7 runs, 6 earned in 4 innings. So, Mark, we have the good, we have the not so good. We have no shortage of storylines to get into with this game.
There really was a lot to this one in the end, Al. I mean, what looked like it's going to be a straight-up MacKenzie Gore and maybe Keibert Ruiz story, not that it became a side note, because I believe at all that what MacKenzie did deserved to be brushed off to the side. But so much happened after he departed the game. Basically, all of the scoring in the game came after that. And as it's playing out, I'm thinking to myself, okay, we've been doing these podcasts now. As you said, this is our 5th season. And I feel like for the last 2, maybe even the last 3 of those seasons, we would take a game like this and say, hey, what was the most important thing? It was MacKenzie Gore being absolutely dominant, 13 strikeouts, 1 hit in 6 innings, and that supersedes anything else. I feel like just as the team believes that it's time to make a transition, I think it's time for us to make a little transition here as well and say that, yes, that was outstanding. It bodes well for the future. That's exactly what you wanted to see from your ace, the guy that you want to lead the staff for years to come moving forward. But you know what? You got to finish the job. And it's not his fault. He did everything he possibly could. But if this team wants to get to that next level, and they believe that they can do that, they're going to find themselves in positions like this against a good team where they have a chance to win it late, and you have to execute in all the areas that matter at the end to win a game. That means good relief pitching. It means good situational hitting. It means good defense. And you saw in all three of those departments some real shaky moments there at the end. And so, yes, feel good about all the good things that happened in this game, but I think you should feel upset because this is a game they absolutely could have won. And it's a game they're going to have to learn how to win if they want to become the team they believe they can be.
And it's a game that provided preliminary confirmation for some fears that we have with this team this season. I mean, we talked about this on the last installment of the podcast. The bullpen is a concern. And, nobody wants to overreact to one game, but the bullpen in this game was really bad. And, you say to yourself, okay, is this going to be a trend for the season, or is this just going to be a hiccup that we look back at and laugh at when the bullpen is killing it 2 weeks from now? We shall see. But, it's funny with Gore because it's not just that he was good. He was like outstanding, So, like this wasn't like 1 run in 5 innings and he had 8 strikeouts and you feel good. It was a nice performance. This was like, historic what MacKenzie Gore did in this game. And really is a shame that the Nats didn't win and that it's almost like you forget about what he did, although we're not forgetting about what he did just because of all that ended up happening. But for MacKenzie Gore in this game, 6 scoreless innings, 13 strikeouts versus no walks. I mean, that is absolute dominance. 13 strikeouts versus no walks. He gave up just 1 hit, which was a single. 93 pitches, 66 strikes, 27 balls. Gore per StatCast had an average four-seam fastball velocity of 95.8 miles per hour, generated 20 swings and misses. The 13 strikeouts, the most by a pitcher on an opening day in Expos/Nats history. This is as good as you will see a pitcher pitch. When we talk about, of course, like the upside possessed by MacKenzie Gore, this was that upside on full display. And, to the concerns with MacKenzie Gore, him putting guys on base, he puts 1 guy on base the entire outing. What a job by MacKenzie Gore on opening day.
And they wiped that guy out immediately with a caught stealing, with credit to Gore and Keibert Ruiz for getting that done. I mean, this was everything you could possibly want a start to be from somebody in this situation. You mentioned the word historic. That is exactly what it is. It's not just historic from a franchise perspective, as you mentioned. Let's take it beyond that. 13 strikeouts, no runs, no walks. Only 1 pitcher in the major leagues in the modern era since 1900 has done that on opening day, and his name was Bob Gibson in 1967. He had a pretty good career, as best as I know, before my time, but I'm pretty sure I know who Bob Gibson was. I mean, that's the company that MacKenzie Gore kept in this one. Let's remember, he's limited to 6 innings and 93 pitches because they're not going to let a guy go deeper than that on opening day. And for anybody who was saying, and I got the tweets, people saying, how could Davey pull him after 6? Can't put him back out there for the 7th again. Guys, it's opening day. Zack Wheeler was pulled after 6 innings and 97 pitches as well. It's a long way to go. You don't push him on day 1. You just do not do that yet. And you saw from MacKenzie himself after that last strikeout, the 13th, to end the 6th inning, kind of a little flex as he turned with his back towards the plate. He knew that that was the end of his day. He was emptying the tank there to do it. Let's not discuss trying to go any further than that. This was brilliance in every way, getting ahead in the count, putting hitters away, not having those long at-bats with foul balls and full counts that we've become accustomed to sometimes with him. This was everything on display for him at the same time. And let's not forget that his last start last season was also against the Phillies and against Zack Wheeler, and he had 6 scoreless innings on that day. You combine these 2 starts now, his last 2 major league starts, 12 scoreless innings, 4 hits, 1 walk, and 22 strikeouts against a very good lineup. That is elite stuff. It's that kind of stuff and that kind of performance that makes you say this guy can be an ace on a good team.
He has begun his age 26 season, so he's right at the time at which you would think if he's going to deliver on his potential, it's going to happen now. And like I said, I mean, last season, MacKenzie Gore put a lot of guys on base. He, for last regular season, ranked third to last among all qualified pitchers in the majors in WHIP, 1.419. To only put the one guy on base in this game, just awesome to see. So can't say enough good things about the work of MacKenzie Gore. The other big positive from this game, especially the earlier portion of the game, was catcher Keibert Ruiz. And if you've been monitoring your Davey Martinez press conferences lately, a lot of praise for Keibert Ruiz, talking about weight loss, talking about Keibert Ruiz not feeling good about these last two seasons, being focused, being motivated for this season. Well, he's off to a good start. Ruiz on Thursday as the Nats starting catcher and number 7 batter, 2 for 4 with a solo homer and a single. And he threw out a runner on an attempted steal of second base. So threw out ex-Nat Kyle Schwarber, in fact. Top of the second, threw out Schwarber in an attempted steal of second base for the second out. But Ruiz in the bottom of the third, a leadoff first pitch opposite field single to left center field for the Nats' first hit of this regular season. And then came an absolute masterpiece. Ruiz in a Nats 1-run fifth, a 2-out full count solo homer to right field for a 1-0 Nats lead to conclude a 12-pitch plate appearance in which he fouled off 7 consecutive pitches at one point. What a job by Keibert Ruiz in that plate appearance.
That was a brilliant at-bat, and I want to point something out about it because we know Keibert's a free swinger, and he can foul a ball off and work the count and get himself into that kind of situation. And sometimes he does that by swinging a ball 4 over and over again and fouling it off. It didn't happen in this case. I think all but one of those 7 foul balls were on pitches in the strike zone. So it was smart decisions by him to fight those pitches off. It's not like he was giving up a walk that was there for the taking. And so for him to do all that and then cap it with a huge home run to give him the lead, the crowd erupted at that moment. You could see the emotion from Ruiz himself to do that off Zack Wheeler. That was a huge moment for him and really capped off a great opening day for him. Had the first hit. At that point, he's got the only 2 hits of the game off Wheeler for the Nationals. Throwing the first runner out. I know it's Kyle Schwarber, not exactly a speedster out there, but to throw a guy out, we know what his problems have been in that regard. To have the good quality at bat and deliver like that. And let's not forget, he's behind the plate working with MacKenzie Gore for 6 innings, calling a great game as well. Obviously, you want everyone on this team to get off to a good start this year, but I think arguably nobody needs it more than Keibert Ruiz, given his struggles last year, especially the slow start. He knows it. He's really trying not to put pressure on himself and think too much about this kind of stuff, but he knows it. So for him to get off to a good start like that has got to be a boost of confidence for a guy who desperately needs it, and you hope he keeps that up and gets off to a good start to the season, and that now allows him to become the player that he's supposed to be.
We also in this game had a big hit for Luis Garcia Jr. He is the Nats starting second baseman and number 3 batter. Went 2 for 4 with an RBI single and another single. And he had a stolen base. Garcia in the Nats a 2-run 8th had a 2-out RBI single to center field to tie the game at 3 despite having been down in the count at 1.02. And he had to steal a second base. So all of these things were good. But with the offense, if you get away from Keibert Ruiz and Luis Garcia Jr., there was not much else happening in this game. The Nats had just 5 hits over 10 innings. 4 of the hits came from Ruiz and Garcia. The Nats worked 3 walks. The Nats went just 2 for 11 with runners in scoring position. And you look at some of the better-known names on this team, just not much happening in this game. C.J. Abrams as the Nats starting shortstop and number 1 batter, 0 for 5 with an RBI ground out and 2 strikeouts. James Wood as the Nats starting left fielder and number 2 batter, 0 for 3 with a walk. Dylan Cruz was down in the 8th spot. He is the Nats starting right fielder, went 0 for 3 with a walk. Paul DeYoung as the Nats starting third baseman and number 6 batter, 0 for 4, 4 strikeouts. Nathaniel Lowe as the Nats starting first baseman and number 5 batter, 1 for 4 with a single and 3 strikeouts. Josh Bell as the Nats starting DH and number 4 batter, 0 for 4 with a strikeout. So, good stuff from Keibert Ruiz, good stuff from Luis Garcia Jr., but beyond that, the offense really just did not do much in this game.
Well, so you start by saying, okay, you're facing Zack Wheeler, a legit Cy Young contender, on a 4:00 game where the shadows were a factor. And I don't want to discredit what MacKenzie Gore did and attribute to that, but it was a tough day for hitters to see, and I think you saw that as well for the Nats hitters against Wheeler. But there were chances late in the game once he was out of it, especially the seventh inning. And this is where they could have taken the game. And what I was talking about earlier about learning how to execute in these key moments, you had a prime example of it in the bottom of the seventh. You've got runners on second and third with one out in a game that at that point is now you're trailing 2-1. So you have a chance to at least get the tying run home, if not the go-ahead run as well. You've got to put the bat on the ball. Who's at the plate? Unfortunately, it's the guy who you probably have the least confidence in putting the bat on the ball. That's Paul DeJong. The Nats signed Paul DeJong right at the start of spring training for two reasons. Really good defense at third base and home run power, something that they desperately need, as we've talked about. He's also a huge swing and miss guy, strikes out a ton. And it's kind of like an all or nothing situation with him. And in a situation there where you just need to get the bat on the ball, get it out of the infield and tie the game, and he couldn't do that, one of his 4 strikeouts in the game, that was problematic. It's one game, so you don't want to read too much into it, but that's kind of who Paul DeJong is. You hope every once in a while he hits a home run in a meaningful spot, but striking out with a chance to tie a game is something you may see him do more regular this year, and that's frustrating. And then Ruiz batted after him, also had the chance with 2 outs to get that runner home. I mentioned how great the approach was in the home run and how he fouled off good pitches over the plate. He swung at a pitch in that at bat in the 7th inning that hit him in the shin. Okay, it was nowhere close to a strike. He still does have that in him, and it's something he's going to have to perfect and not get too swing happy in those big moments. So while there were some good things, that 7th inning aborted rally in particular stood out to me because that's a spot where you can take the game back in control for yourself, and maybe it never gets to the 10th inning, when we saw what happened once it went to extras today.
It's also worth noting, too, that 2 of the Nats' mere 5 hits in this game were like kind of cheapy hits. The Luis Garcia Jr. single in the bottom of the 7th, a leadoff single, that was on a fly ball to no man's land in shallow center field. And the Nathaniel Lowe hit in this game, bottom of the 7th, a one-out opposite field single. That was to no man's land in left field, and that was not like some overly impressive single. I also want to bring this into the mix. Jacob Young, bottom of the 6th, draws a leadoff 7-pitch walk despite having been down at 1.02. Good piece of hitting. But he then, with James Wood batting, gets thrown out in an attempted steal of second base for the 2nd out. Hated to see that. You have arguably your best batter in the box, and a speedster like Young gets thrown out like that. Now, look, Jacob Young is fast. He's not going to get thrown out that often, but he gets thrown out there. That was a killer to see that happen with Wood batting.
You heard Davey Martinez before the game talk about their base running and how they need to be smarter this year. He still wants them to be aggressive, but you've got to be smart about it. That's a spot where being smarter says, hang on, let's let the big boy at the plate take a whack at it. Now, the flip side was in the 8th inning, and this helped set them up to score the 2 runs that they did. You get a leadoff walk from Dylan Cruz, who batted 8th, by the way. I don't think anybody saw that coming. All spring, he batted 2nd, and all of a sudden on opening day, he's batting 8th. I think it was a matchup thing, but I think we may also see a little more of this as Davey Martinez kind of saying, hey, kid, you still need to prove it at this level. I'm not sure how I felt about that because maybe he could have been up in some spots earlier in the lineup with the game on the line. But in that situation, he drew the walk. Jacob Young gets hit by the pitch, and they pull off a perfect double steal where the Phillies were caught flat-footed. They had no chance at it. And that put runners on 2nd and 3rd with nobody out when they needed those runs to tie the game and the top of the order up. So that was a smart, aggressive move that paid off because the Phillies were not expecting it. So that was the good part of the base running. The bad part, of course, getting thrown out, Jacob Young, when James Wood's at the plate.
Hey, are you a law firm partner or associate looking to change firms for reasons such as compensation or a better platform? Mason Kalfas, he is the top legal recruiter in Washington, D.C. He wants to help you improve your career. Mason Kalfas specializes in working with partners in the D.C. area in various regulatory areas such as antitrust, securities, energy, and banking. When you select a legal recruiter, you want someone to go to bat for your career who cares about you and your goals. Mason has placed partners at most of the largest and most elite firms in the U.S. in D.C., New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and other cities. He understands the process and how to improve your candidacy, compensation, and career trajectory. Mason and his team of 10 legal recruiters at Zenith Legal will get you the free agent contract that you deserve. He can't promise Juan Soto numbers, but Mason will maximize your value and keep the focus on your long-term goals. Don't get stuck in the minors or on a rebuilding team with cheap owners. Call Mason today at 202-486-3535.
Tim Shover's here to tell you about a special offer that Babbel has for Nats Chat podcast listeners. I took Spanish in high school, but forgot all of it the minute I got to college. But the past few years, while covering Nationals press conferences, I've noticed that the bilingual Davey Martinez has been getting more and more questions in Spanish and answering them accordingly.
No, tenemos un roster, muchos de los jóvenes de nosotros, pero tenemos veteranos también que nos va a ayudar. Esperamos un momentito para poner todo junto, pero yo creo que este año tenemos un roster buen fuerte.
If you're like me and you want to know what is Davey saying when answering these questions in Spanish, because after all, he is talking about the Washington Nationals, then one option is turning to Babbel, where language no longer has to be the barrier. With over 16 million subscriptions sold, Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by a 20-day money-back guarantee. Let's get more of you talking in a new language. Babbel is gifting our listeners 60% off subscriptions at babbel.com/natschat. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/natschat. That's spelled BABBEL.com/natschat. Babbel.com/natschat. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Hey, Cam Newton here, and this episode is brought to you by Roe. Valentine's Day is right around the corner, but that real, good, passionate romance, that strong, hot, uncontrollable romance should be a year-round pleasure. They say the best gifts are experiences. So take your girl on a ride of her life with Roe's ED treatment. Rose Sparks is a 2-in-1 prescription treatment for stronger, harder erections. They hit that bloodstream faster because they dissolve right up under your tongue. Getting hard faster means more buns. After they dissolve, they typically take about 15 minutes. Rose Sparks stays in your system for 36 hours, so you can go back to back to back to back to back, back to back to back to back to back. Roe connects guys with a medical provider 100% online. So there's no awkward conversation with in-person providers. If prescribed, new sexual health patients get $15 off Sparks on a recurring plan. Connect with the provider at ro.co/fourth to find out if Ro Sparks is right for you. That's ro.co/fourth for $15 off your first order. If approved, treatment ships directly to your door. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, and/or manufacturing review. For full safety information, go to ro.co/safety info.
The right-hander throws. And a swing and a fly ball right field deep toward the corner. Chasing over is Cruz on the run. He reaches and he can't get it. It's off his glove. The ball deep in the corner will score 2. Real Muto digs for third. The throw in that direction is not in time. And the Phillies lead it 7-3.
All right, to the Nats bullpen in this 7-3 10-inning loss to the Phillies at Nationals Park on opening day. 5 Nats relievers combined to allow 7 runs, 6 earned in 4 innings. You had MacKenzie Gore painting a masterpiece, and then you had the rest of the game from a pitching standpoint for the Nats. Lucas Sims, 1 run in 2/3 of an inning. He and a Phillies 2-run 7th gave up a 1-out first pitch solo homer by Bryce Harper on a bomb to center field to tie the game at 1. The homer going a projected 415 feet per Statcast. So, like right from the get-go, you say, oh boy, here we go. Then, Jose A. Ferrer, for whom there is a lot of optimism. I know I have it. I think a lot of people listening have it. He did not get off to a good start to his 2025 regular season. He faced 8 batters. He got 4 outs. He and that Phillies 2-run 7th on the very first pitch that he threw. Gave up a 2-out first pitch solo homer by Kyle Schwarber to right center field for a 2-1 Phillies lead. And then Ferrer in a Phillies 1-run 8th gave up a run on a double, a single, and a run-scoring wild pitch, and he issued a walk. He did generate 3 strikeouts, so he still gave you a glimpse at what has us all excited about him, but he was not effective in this outing, to be sure. Kyle Finnegan, he worked the 9th He tossed a scoreless top of the ninth, but he did, as Finnegan is prone to do. He put guys on base. He gave up a leadoff single. He issued back-to-back two-out walks. Colin Poche, he worked the 10th, or at least the beginning portion of the 10th. He officially allowed 4 runs, 3 earned, in 2/3 of an inning. He had what ended up being a 4-run 10th for the Phillies. Faced 5 batters, got just 2 outs. He actually retired the first 2 batters he faced, but he then issued a 2-out, 5-pitch walk of Bryce Harper, then gave up a 2-out first pitch, 2-run double by Alec Boehm off the left center field warning track for a 5-3 Phillies lead, and then issued a 2-out, 5-pitch walk of Kyle Schwarber, and then Eduardo Salazar in that Phillies 4-run 10th, faced 3 batters but got just 1 out. He, on the first pitch that he threw, gave up a 2-out, 2-run opposite field triple by JT Realmuto to the right field corner for a 7-3 Phillies lead, although the ball went off the glove of Dylan Cruz. Cruz could have made that catch. You watch the replay. That was a catchable ball, not an easy play, but it's funny, we mentioned what Davey Martinez has recently been saying about Keibert Ruiz. What Davey Martinez recently has been saying about Dylan Cruz is that he's a Gold Glove candidate. So off that praise, we get this moment for Dylan Cruz. It's one moment. We're not going to go nuts off it, but that was disappointing to see. Cruz not make that catch. Ends up being a triple for Realmuto. And the Nats bullpen ends up giving up, as mentioned, 7 runs, 6 earned in 4 innings. This was something. 5 Nats relievers were used in this game. Not a single one had what you could call a good outing. The Nats essentially went 0 for 5 in terms of relievers truly being good in this game.
The only one who posted a 0 was Finnegan, and he loaded the bases and had to do everything in his power to wriggle his way out of it. That was almost disaster for him. So no, not good all around. We discussed this coming into the season, our concerns about the bullpen, and not necessarily the guys at the back end, although Finnegan and Ferrer weren't great, but the guys to get the ball to them in, say, the 6th and 7th innings. And that we saw that on full display here with Lucas Sims. Now, a couple things to remember. Derek Law's starting the year on the IL after a delayed start to spring training. It kind of backfired on them. The arm just didn't respond well. He says he's not necessarily hurt, but he just needs more time. And so he's going to be out for probably the first 2 weeks of the season, maybe a little bit more. That could have been a spot for him. Jorge Lopez, who's also supposed to be one of their primary setup men, did not pitch in this game. He warmed up later on. He was dealing with a hip issue late in spring. He just didn't get a lot of work. A lot of these guys did not get significant work in spring training for one reason or another. And all of a sudden now it's opening day and you're being thrown out there in high leverage spots in front of a sellout crowd against a really good lineup. That's a tough transition to make. I don't know what the answer to that is. Everybody's got to deal with it in some way. Because you can't simulate high leverage stuff in spring training, the adrenaline of all that. It's just not possible. It's why it's always so hard to evaluate relievers in March, because it just is nothing like what they will face come April. But in a broader sense, it does kind of underscore these concerns that we've been talking about with their bullpen depth. And I think back to a year ago, 7th inning of a close game, you're going to see Dylan Floro, maybe Robert Garcia in those spots. Then you're going to see Hunter Harvey in the 8th and Finnegan in the 9th. Maybe we didn't know for sure at this point last year that foursome was going to be pretty good, but they turned out to be really good. Are you confident that whoever the 4 are now that you'd be using in those same spots are going to be as reliable as that foursome was last year? I'm not there. I have concerns about this. It's really been my number one concern throughout the spring, and even after they made the moves they did. I think this is going to be a problem area for them, and they're going to have to figure out who can they trust in big spots. And can't keep going to the well if somebody's not getting it done there. I don't think they can afford to just wait for it to happen. You've got to be willing to make moves, especially when they're talking about the guys they sent down being potentially good arms or some of the younger guys who didn't appear in this game. You need to be willing to go to them if it continues down this path.
Well, and you think about the bullpen contractually speaking, right? The Nats' number 1 reliever per the hierarchy of the bullpen is a guy who they non-tendered this past offseason. Just think about it in those terms. In this game, the Nats in the crucial 10th inning go to who? Colin Poche, a guy who they signed to a minor league contract. In theory, you're facing the mighty Phillies. You're not going to someone on a minor league contract to take on that oh-so-important 10th inning. So guys can be good with, sketchy contractual backgrounds, but just thinking about things logically, it doesn't strike you as an overly imposing bullpen, certainly not on paper. You mentioned Derek Law. So the Nats on Wednesday evening announced a bunch of roster moves to finalize the regular season opening major league roster. In terms of position players on injured lists, we have Andres Chaparro on the 10-day IL. He's dealing with an oblique strain. And then the rest of the news has to do with pitchers. So with Derek Law, he's on the 15-day injured list, retroactive to March 24th with what has been labeled right forearm inflammation. You mentioned the delayed start to spring training. Is it safe to say that that was a screw-up, that the Nats misplayed this in starting him so late in spring training?
So I asked Derek before the game if there's anything he would have done differently now knowing what he knows in hindsight. And he gave a long pause, finally said, well, yes and no. He does feel like he needed the delayed start, that he wasn't going to be ready quite yet after as much as he pitched last year. And he thinks the thought process behind it all was pretty solid, but he does think they maybe waited a little too long and that the ramp up was a little too quick. And I think the problem is when you're doing that in spring training, you've got a finite target date that you've got to be ready by. And it maybe wasn't quite enough and certainly didn't allow for any kind of slip-ups along the way or issues. And that's what happened as he started to face hitters. He just wasn't recovering the day after he pitched well enough. And so he couldn't get into games. And they got to the end and said, well, he's just not ready yet. We've got to put him on the IL. Now, again, he's not saying he's hurt. I know he's technically on the IL with the inflammation in his forearm, but he's saying that his arm just wasn't ready yet. So I get why they did what they did. I think he understands why they did it too and doesn't think it was the wrong line of thinking, but the execution of it obviously could have been better. And for a team that just didn't have that many reliable relievers to begin with coming into the season, this is one of the few that you kind of feel like you know what you have. It would have been really nice to have him at full strength on opening day instead of the situation they're now in.
The other thing I wonder about with Derek Law is this. Last season, age 33 season, he has 90 innings pitched. Is what we're seeing here a guy who was used a ton last season and is having a hard time recovering from that, especially given that he's in his mid-30s? I mean, this is his age 34 season. And understand with Derek Law, he had never come close to 90 innings pitched in a season. Like, that was an extreme uptick in workload for him last season. And you don't often see that, right? A guy in his 30s all of a sudden getting this surge in innings pitched. Well, you had that with Law last regular season. And I just would wonder, is that body going to properly recover from a season in which he was a workhorse? And he was tremendous last season. 90 innings pitched, ERA at 2.60. Like, that's awesome what he did for this team last season. But age 34 season coming off that kind of usage, is the body going to respond the way that you want it to? We'll see. Hey, Al Galdi here for Window Nation. The only thing more amazing than the Masson dispute finally ending is the latest great offer from Window Nation to listeners of the Nats Chat podcast. 2 free windows for every 2 windows that you buy, and you pay nothing until 2027. This offer is good for now through March 31st. Schedule your free estimate. Call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com and tell Window Nation that you want the deal that you heard about from Al Galdi on the Nats Chat podcast. Window Nation windows are the best. Times are tough financially right now. One of the best investments that you can make is on home improvements, especially ones that increase the value of your home and save you money in the long run. Window Nation windows do just those things. 866-90-NATION, windownation.com to Window Nation that Al Galdi sent you, and make sure that you get the special offer. 2 free windows for every 2 windows that you buy. Pay nothing until 2027. 866-90-NATION or windownation.com. That's 866-90-NATION or windownation.com. And tell Window Nation that Al Galdi from the Nats Chat podcast sent you.
Hey, Cam Newton here, and this episode is brought to you by Roe. Valentine's Day is right around the corner, but that real, good, passionate romance, that strong, hot, uncontrollable romance should be a year-round pleasure. They say the best gifts are experiences. So take your girl on a ride of her life with Roe's ED treatment. Rose Sparks is a 2-in-1 prescription treatment for stronger, harder erections. They hit that bloodstream faster because they dissolve right up under your tongue. Getting hard faster means more buns. After they dissolve, they typically take about 15 minutes. Rose Sparks stays in your system for 36 hours, so you can go back to back to back to back to back, back to back to back to back to back. Roe connects guys with a medical provider 100% online. So there's no awkward conversation with in-person providers. If prescribed, New sexual health patients get $15 off Sparks on a recurring plan. Connect with the provider at ro.co/fourth to find out if Ro Sparks is right for you. That's ro.co/fourth for $15 off your first order. If approved, treatment ships directly to your door. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, and or manufacturing review. For full safety information, go to ro.co/safety info.
1 ball, 2 strikes. Here's the set. The kick and the pitch to Abrams. Swinging a ground ball right side. It's caught off at the hole by Stott. He slides. He pops up. He throws to first in time. And the ball game is over. And the Phillies win it in extra innings on opening day, 7-3.
The other thing with the Nats in terms of roster moves in recent days is this DJ Herz news, which was brutal. Tuesday morning, the Nats announcing that they had put Herz on the 15-day injured list due to a left elbow UCL sprain, which, as we know, can be a precursor to needing a UCL surgery of some kind. Now, I know Davey Martinez during his pregame presser on Thursday afternoon said that Herz is getting a second opinion on the elbow regarding whether he needs a UCL surgery of some kind. But the Nats on Wednesday evening announced having transferred Herz to the 60-day injured list, which would seem to suggest they're not expecting him back anytime soon. So I guess we can't say with certainty that he's going to need UCL surgery, but it feels like it's trending that way, right?
Yeah, here's what I can tell you from some more conversations I had after we heard from Davey and just kind of talking to some other people behind the scenes who know what's going on here. Let's remember, he also, rough spring, velocity was not there. He insisted there was not an injury, that he was having trouble just kind of ramping himself up, that the adrenaline's not there in spring training, that this has happened to him in previous years. And once he gets into the regular season, things work out fine. The Nats looked at all the peripherals. They talked to him. They said that makes sense. We don't see any other reason to believe that there's an injury here. So they decided we're going to send you to AAA and give you more time until you're ready. Well, once he gets optioned, he goes back to them and says, hey, you know what? Let's get this checked out just in case there's anything going on. And oh, lo and behold, there's a sprained ulnar collateral ligament. So what the Nats are insisting, not that he was hurt all along, or certainly that he didn't tell them that he was hurt all along. I think the theory is more that as the spring played out and he started to realize this isn't going well and I'm not going to make the team, or I'm having a long shot to make the team, I better start trying to hump this up, that maybe he did the damage in trying to exert himself a little too much late in camp to get himself back to a point, that where he thought he could compete again. So number one, there's that. The sprain, let's be clear, a sprain is a tear. It's just a matter of how significant the tear of the ligament is. Is it a full-blown tear or is it a partial tear? And that's what these MRIs ultimately determine. He's already had the first one with a team doctor. He's now getting a second opinion, and I'm told that second opinion is with Dr. Keith Meister in Dallas, noted orthopedist. This is a guy who performs a lot of Tommy John surgeries, including members of the Nationals in recent years. He also performs the internal brace procedure that some guys have on top of Tommy John or instead of Tommy John. So he's on the 60-day. He's going to see Dr. Meister. You can read between the lines there where this would seem to be headed. Unless the doctor finds reason to believe that it's not a severe tear and that he could somehow try to rehab this, with rest and rehab and strengthening and come back at some point later in the year. It sounds to me like he's going there and most likely is going to have season-ending surgery, whether it's Tommy John, whether it's the internal brace, whether it's both. Now, the one thing, and I heard this from people with the team as well, whatever they find out, they want to move quickly on it. They don't want this to turn into a situation where they're trying to wait it out and all of a sudden in July, they decide, yeah, he's having the surgery. And now you're threatening next season as well. If he needs it, they want to get it done right away. He misses the year. You hope he's good to go next year. But it's really unfortunate for a guy who, while he may not have been in a great position to make the opening day roster, they were counting on him. At his best, as we've discussed, he was as good as anyone outside of MacKenzie Gore, maybe Jake Irvin last year. They really did believe this is a big year for him. And if he ends up missing it, that's a big step back for him, and it's going to hurt the team.
It absolutely is a really bad break. He has real upside with him being a strikeout pitcher. It's funny what you just said about whatever they decide they want to get this done quickly if, in fact, it is surgery, because we danced this dance with Josiah Gray last season, and we saw what that ended up doing. He ended up having the Tommy John and the internal brace, but not until July. It's just so maddening, because if anyone's workload last season was managed carefully, it was DJ Herz's, right? DJ Herz last season, 19 starts in the regular season, 88 and 2/3 innings. The Nats were so careful with how he was used, and yet he still ends up with a UCL issue. The other thing is this, and I didn't mention this on the podcast on purpose, we were this close to getting out of March with the Nats not having a pitcher having suffered some kind of a significant elbow injury in spring training season. You go back to the last 3 years: Joe Ross in 2022, Cade Cavalli 2023, Mason Thompson 2024. Every February/March, a notable Nats pitcher had suffered some kind of significant elbow injury. We were almost there, that nobody had it, and then this DJ Herz news ends up happening. So just brutal, and obviously especially brutal for him. So certainly hope for the best right there. And then in terms of other Nats players who are out to begin the regular season, of course, there is Josiah Gray, who we just mentioned, Cade Cavalli, he's on the 15-day injured list. Zach Brixey, reliever, he's on the 15-day injured list as well. All right, so game 2 of this series, not until Saturday, as we have the traditional off day after opening day. I really wish this was not the case. These off days are precious to me. If you're a team, you want off days when you really need them, not after opening day. Is that an MLB call or a Nationals call that they have this off day after the home opener? And this is not just for the Nats. This is for every team, unless you play indoors. But do you know, is that a Nats call or an MLB call?
No, that's an MLB call. And you basically see it, any team that opens up on the East Coast or in the Midwest, they pretty much always do this. The only places where you won't have the immediate off day are going to be warm weather cities or places in domes. And it's unfortunate. You're right. You want to get into the rhythm and flow of the season, but it's built in there for the possibility of a rain out on opening day. And the idea being, you buy tickets to opening day, there's so much that goes along with it. If you have a game the next day, now you're rescheduling that opening day game for maybe August or whenever you have an off day later on, and the people who had tickets for that game now get that game, and so whoever had tickets to game 2 suddenly gets opening day. And so it's really done for that reason. It's to prevent or to protect themselves from rain outs, snow outs, and to protect the people who have tickets to that opening day game so they actually get to see the first game of the season. It has happened here. We've had them have to rain out opening day and come back and play the next day. When it's gorgeous like it was on Thursday and it's supposed to be again on Friday, that's where it's a little frustrating. You wish they'd be back out there.
I just would love to know the percentage of the time that you end up actually needing that off day after opening day, because I'd be willing to bet it's less than 10%, maybe even less than 5%. It just feels like you almost never end up actually needing it, but perhaps the data would tell us otherwise. Anyway, game 2 for the Nats against the Phillies Saturday afternoon, 4:05. Jake Irvin is the Nats starting pitcher. Game 3, Sunday afternoon, 1:35. Mitchell Parker is the Nats starting pitcher. Now, you might say, well, does this mean that Mitchell Parker is the number 3 starter? This seems to be more the Nats wanting at least 2 lefties starting in this series against the Phillies. Is that correct?
Yeah, if you look back for a few weeks now, it's been lined up this way where Parker and at that time, Shinosuke Ogasawara was also pitching on that day. And yeah, they were competing for the 5th starter's job, but they were lined up to start game 3. That's exactly what it is. They wanted to have another lefty against the Phillies. You saw all their lefty hitters at the top of the lineup in this game and how difficult they can be. MacKenzie Gore did great against them. I don't know if Mitchell Parker can be expected to do the same, but that was the idea, is have him face them. And I think also it allows Michael Soroka to debut in Toronto, his home country. Nice little twist for him. And maybe even more importantly, Trevor Williams to face the Blue Jays instead of the Phillies. I think they probably felt like Williams versus the Phillies might not be the best matchup for him to get his season started. So I think you combine that with whether it was going to be Parker or Herz or Ogasawara, they kind of knew there was going to be a lefty for game 3 no matter what.
All right, we are offering shout-outs once again on the Nats Chat podcast this season. If you want to say a hello, if you want to send a congratulations, if you want to say a happy birthday, any kind of wish or greeting or message to anyone who listens to the podcast, email Tim Shovers, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. We have this shout-out to Steve Leonard, the Nats' #1 fan in Paris, France. And this shout out comes to us from Steve's friends, Brent and Linda Stone. On this side of the pond, Steve followed the team religiously for his many years in Washington, has carried that torch to the City of Light when he moved immediately after the World Series win. Like many of the Nats faithful scattered outside of the DMV area, unable to attend games, the Nats Chat podcast is his lifeline to keeping up with all things Washington Nationals related. Here's to another season carrying our Boys of Summer banner in the EU, Steve, and to hosting you and your family for a game when you make it stateside this year or any year. Again, that for Steve Leonard in Paris, France, from Brent and Linda Stone. Brent and Linda, we say thank you. And Steve, we hope all is well in Paris.
As we've discussed many times now in the 4+ seasons we've done this, one of the great things about the podcast and modern technology is the ability to reach anybody anywhere in the world. And it reminds you that there are fans well outside of the Washington, D.C. area. So to be able to serve as that connection for Steve and anybody else who lives abroad and still follows the team, it means a lot to us to know that we're a part of that for you, and we appreciate it and hope you do get to see a game. You know, there've been talk of MLB playing games in Paris at some point. I would love personally to get to make that trip if they would pick the Nats for it. Maybe Steve can be the link there and help show that there are Nats fans already there in France. Come on, MLB, let's send the Nats to Paris for an overseas game.
Maybe you could stay at Steve's place. You know, you could crash in his basement or something like that. I don't know. I don't want to speak for Steve, but hey, you know, it just would kind of make some sense. We'll see.
I think it'd be a small price, but a worthy thing for all the entertainment we've given him over the last 4+ years. Come on, Steve, make it happen.
Yeah, or maybe Steve knows of a good hostel you could stay at. Who knows? Anyway, hit us up. Find us on X at Nats_chat. You can find us on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. We also have a website you can check out too, natschatpodcast.com, at which you can purchase a Nats Chat Podcast t-shirt. This opening day installment of Nats Chat brought to us by the great Mason Kalfas, the top legal recruiter in Washington, D.C. Mason has been with us since our first season. You can reach him at 202-486-3535. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat, brought to us by 106.7 The Fan. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.
Now the wind of the pitch. Ruiz swings and hits one in the air to right field. It's deep, sending Castellanos back, way back. Warning track wall. Going. Goodbye. Bang, zoom, go. Fireworks here at Nationals Park. Keibert Ruiz on the 12th pitch of his at-bat against Zack Wheeler, puts it into the Nationals bullpen off a 96-mile-an-hour fastball.